Augusta here from the New Face of Finance. This is my 28-week pregnancy video. I'm filming from the Mercure Great Danes in Maidstone. We needed a couple of days off. Obviously, we're a little bit paranoid, having been stuck in South Africa during a honeymoon, but we needed a break. So we figured that a couple of days in a hotel with a bit of room service, a gym and a pool facility would do us some good, and probably the last chance we'll get before baby arrives. So the last 4 weeks have been eventful. One of the key things that happened last week, one random night, was a Thursday evening, just minding my own business, and I could feel baby sliding into my pelvis. I didn't realise it was sliding into my pelvis, but I just realised it moved position and it moved further down. And not long after it did that, I started getting a lot of pain in the pelvic area. And I've talked about pelvic girdle pain before, but when it strikes, it's like the pain is insane. And I tried to get to sleep that night, and I got up several times. You know, I was up every 15 minutes to half an hour. It was like super painful, to the point actually that I started puking. I puked a few times during the course of the night, and couldn't think why I was puking, but it probably was because the pain. It was when the pain got massively unbearable. That's when I just couldn't hold anything in, and it was nothing even to puke up. It was bile by the time, you know, in the later stages, but it was really super excruciating. So after a super rough night, about 7 AM, baby decided to move back up away from the pelvis. I guess it figured that this whole position was affecting its food and it wasn't really up for it. But it's moved up. And although I felt quite a lot of movement, I haven't felt it move back down into that position. If it does, I'm almost holding my stomach hoping, oh my gosh, don't, just stay where you are. So, I mean, that was a super tough night. But it's been okay. Physically, apart from that particular evening. It's always a strange one because you do want baby to move. Obviously, midwife and doctors encourage it, but at the same time, it's balancing it with kind of your comfort. It's always quite strange because, you know, baby's got, especially when they're kind of this size, and then probably in the next 4 to 8 weeks, baby's going to get so big that there's not going to be that much space to move as rapidly as they're able to right now. But it's just a case of balancing it with your kind of comfort. So last week we had a face-to-face meeting with the midwife. It was a standard checkup. We'd had loads of chats like this over the phone over the course of my pregnancy, but actually it was the maybe second time that I was actually sitting and speaking to a midwife about everything that was kind of going on, if there were any issues in the pregnancy and so on. Now, when it was originally booked in, because of the location, it was over at the Six Bells Nursery. I figured it was going to be one of those, you know, mother and baby classes where they teach you how to hold the baby and maybe show you the position to breastfeed. But actually, it was just a one-to-one with the midwife, and I asked her about that, and it turns out that COVID has done away with those kinds of sessions anyway, so now we've got to use the good old internet. Because during the COVID crisis, they're not really letting anybody except expectant mothers into the scan rooms, so no partners, no husbands, no mothers, sisters, whatever. It's just you and whoever is scanning the baby. Nick, unfortunately, hasn't even had a chance to watch the baby in motion during a scan, but this sweet midwife kindly let him in. There wasn't a scan as such, but they've got one of these monitoring machines where they can listen to baby's heartbeat. So she let him in, and we were able to listen to the train tracks that normally indicate that the baby's heartbeat is quite healthy. And when we were done, she'd have to sneak us out the back, or else she'd get a slap on the wrist, but that was really nice of her. Now, for the longest time, we've had this fan club in Margate. I haven't mentioned it in previous videos. And, you know, Nick has always maintained that there's a whole bunch of people, this fan club, constantly watching what we do. I'm not vain enough to have believed this previously, but the evidence always seems to support this. One example being the midwife asking us, okay, well, where do you live? And I said, oh, not far from here. She asked us, where do we live? And I said, oh, not far from here. And then she said the road that we live on. And I said, yep, that's the one. And she was like, flat or house? And I said, house. And she's like, oh, top of the road. And I was like, you know exactly where we live. You know exactly the house. But I let her off because she let us in to have the scan. I guess being Margate famous has its perks, but also a lot of downsides. Anyway, one of the things I also asked her about was my mustard coloured pee, which had been concerning me for some time. I also kind of really hated the smell, and so talked to her about, or asked her why it was likely to be happening. She said that the reason for this may be gestational diabetes and that she'd like to test me for it. Now, it was always on the cards to be tested in week 28, but she just brought this forward a week, and so we ran this test in week 27. So the test is as follows. You don't eat anything between 10 p.m. the night before until 9 a.m. when you turn up at the hospital or clinic to run the test. When you turn up, they what happened to me is she spiked a finger and took some blood and took my sugar level. And then she took some blood. She took my 28-week bloods. Then she gave me a sugary drink. It wasn't even that sugary, which makes me think, my gosh, there's sugar in everything. And then I had to sit there for 2 hours. Then I had to sit there for 2 hours. And after the 2 hours was up, she did my bloods again, and I was allowed to go home. I got a call less than 48 hours later and was informed that, in fact, I do have gestational diabetes. You know, on one hand, it was a little bit disappointing to hear, but on the other hand, it wasn't a massive surprise. Between my P, my age, my elevated BMI, and the fact that my family has a history of diabetes, it was kind of to be expected. So I think that the most sensible thing to do is to continue to do more research around the implications of it, but most importantly, watch my diet. Drink lots of water, stay away from refined sugars, and maybe cut down on my starch intake, which always is challenging because, you know, I've had this horrible pregnancy taste in my mouth, which meant that I've craved sugar during the course of the pregnancy, and also so much stuff contains sugar. So, you know, even if you're staying away from sweets and biscuits, and you're going to replace that with fruits, with oranges and apples and bananas, all of these contain natural sugars anyway. So it's really hard to escape sugar, but it does, for me, I think, provide a crucial opportunity to build some good long-term lifetime habits, because I mean, it's one thing suffering from gestational diabetes during pregnancy, but it's another thing it converting to type 2 post-pregnancy, which statistically is likely to happen. The other thing I've been thinking long and hard about over the last few weeks, few months, is vaccinations. Now, I've never really had a problem with vaccinations growing up. Every vaccination that was on offer, you know, I took them. I was always encouraged. Didn't even really think about it. But I think that the COVID-19 vaccine, the fact that I don't know if it's required and how quick it's being rushed out, has made me really think about this whole concept of vaccinations and forced me to look into them in a bit more detail. So one of the vaccinations that I was offered was the Whopping cough vaccine. And so I did a bit of research around that because I just wanted to make sure that it was something that was necessary. The midwife suggested that I take this vaccine because it would allow antibodies to pass on to baby, which would give it enough immunity until it was old enough to be vaccinated itself around the 8-week mark. Was a bit concerned that it was going to take ages to try and get booked in for a vaccine, but went to the local clinic, which when you do a Google search, the reviews are awful for this place. But anyway, turned up, and asked for the vaccination, and they were like, yeah, come in the next day and we'll do it for you. So I came in about 9:30, 9:45, and after 5 minutes wait, they gave me the vaccination. And was there any side effects? No, not really. I felt good. The only thing is a bit of a sore arm. It's not like I can't do anything with it, you know, I can move it, but there is a little bit of soreness in my shoulder when I move around. That's probably the worst thing. Soreness, it's that pain that you get sometimes when, you know, you've been working out and then you wake up the next day, you haven't worked out in ages, and then you wake up the next day and then it's like, ah. So that's kind of the pain it is. It's not, you know, drastic or unable to, it's not like I can't bear it, but that's like probably the only thing that's happened as a result of the vaccination. The next thing I'm thinking about doing is the flu jab. I've never had a flu jab in my life, but actually flu is a bigger killer than COVID-19. My immunity is not what it was, and baby's going to be born in the winter. So I am really thinking about getting the flu jab as well. I mean, I'm glad that I got the whopping cough, because it's one of those things that you never really hear about anymore. You know, I've never met anyone or heard about much people with whopping cough. But I did watch some videos on YouTube, and actually it's a super silent, prevalent killer for babies if not vaccinated against or if caught. And so I'm kind of glad that they offered the vaccination to me and that we got it done when we did. So you'll notice that I've got a new hairstyle. These are crochet braids, which obviously are a lot less time consuming than actual twists, and I do love a twist. I'm not new to crocheting, but these are really skinny braids, and normally when I crochet I use quite thick bits of hair. And so this was my second attempt using these kind of skinny braids, and I quite like this. I think it's turned out quite well. I learned a lot from the first one. I guess the key to successful crochet braids with these twists is you need quite a few packs. So I used just under 7 packs to achieve the fullness. And it's really important, especially if you've got afro hair like mine, that you straighten the hair after you've washed it, and that the braids or the cornrows that you've got underneath the braids are like super thin. You can't have them too thick or it really won't work out. And you need lots of patience. So with all of that, quite happy with the results. I've been having quite a lot of fun with this, and obviously experimenting to see what hair I want as I transition into motherhood. So what's going to happen over the next few weeks? I haven't had my 28-week scan yet. I did call up to chase a date. It is booked in, so I will be allocated a date soon, but I don't have one yet. Am I worried? Not really. Baby's development's been amazing up until now. Super active baby, super great genes. I'm mentally in a positive space. I'm in a good space. Baby's super spoiled. Don't move around too much. Just a lot of brain activity. Obviously, we'll continue to run these businesses. We just want to have an easy life, but there's always like some kind of challenge in the background, which obviously keeps us busy, which keeps us occupied. And as much as it'd be so nice to go through life without challenges, it's completely unrealistic, especially when you are thriving towards success. So, you know, let's just continue to thank God for the blessings and to pray for the strength to deal with the challenges that will arise. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.